Good evening, everybody. Today is September 25th, 2017. The time is 7:30. We are about to start our council meeting. I'd like to acknowledge Troop 1, Boy Scouts troop from right here in South Kingstown. They're here to join us tonight and listen to part of the presentation. But while they're here, I would ask that the troop come up and lead us with the pledge of to the flag. Come on up, boys. Come right up here to the front. Don't be nervous, we don't bite.
Ready when you are.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Dale, if you can take the roll call.
Council President Healy,
Here.
Council Vice President Collins,
Here.
Councilman DeCruz,
Here.
Councilwoman Gledhill,
Here.
Councilman Vealy,
Here.
all members present.
Item number 4, the approval of the minutes of the previous meetings, the work session, September 11th, 2017, and the regular sessions, September 5th and September 11th, 2017. Do I have a motion to accept?
Motion to approve agenda items 4A and B.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Seeing no nays or abstentions, that motion carries. Moving to item number 6A.
Consent agenda.
5, I'm sorry, 5.
Consent.
Oh, I'm sorry, I always do that. Item number 5, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item 6 is a resolution granting a miscellaneous permit to conduct the Harbor Church 5K road race on September 30th at 8:30 a.m. at the Harbor Church, which is on Waits Corner Road in West Kingston, subject to the execution of a hold harmless agreement indemnifying the town, issuance of a certificate of insurance naming the town as an additional insured for this event in the amount specified by the finance director, and approval from the Traffic and Transportation Review Committee. Proceeds for this event will benefit the Johnny Cake Center and the Welcome House. The application was submitted by Pastor Keith, I apologize if you're here, Maliniak of 277 Waits Corner Road, and this is a renewal. Is there anybody here to speak? Please come forward and state your name.
Good evening, President Healy, Council. My name's Stacy Auger. I'm representing the Harbor Church. And this weekend, Saturday, we are holding the race. We are starting our registrations at 8:30, and then we have a 1K at 9:30, and then the 5K commences at 10. We also have registration online. It's at theharborchurch.net/5K.
I'm for the 1K.
Anybody have any questions here?
So people just register the day of?
No, they can register online. It's available online at the website I just mentioned. It's theharborchurch.net/5K. And I encourage everyone here to go ahead and register and come out and run. All the proceeds are going to the Welcome House and the Johnny Cake Center.
Very good.
Appreciate that.
Very good.
I'll
Make a motion we approve item 6A.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good luck.
Seeing none, wish
Good
you
luck.
well.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Okay, moving on to item number 7, communications. 7B is a communication dated September 13th, 2017, from our town solicitor, Michael Ursillo, Esquire, regarding immigration protection. It has been received, placed on file, and further directs as follows. We as a council.
Sure. As you're aware, I have provided the council this evening with two documents. One, I took your March resolution and I enhanced it with additional items based upon some of the feedback that we were receiving from individuals who are here this evening and who want to talk about the ordinance. But I wanted you to see both the redlined and a clean version of that resolution, which is what I'm recommending to you. The second document is, of course, the proposed ordinance. Again, I've given you the ordinance redlined, which was proposed by the proponents, and then I show you a clean copy without the red lines. As I was speaking to you at the work session, there's really one main reason why in my opinion, the resolution makes sense. It's because the town of South Kingstown does not have an issue with mistreatment or abusing the rights of immigrants or individuals with a different status. I think your police department is doing a phenomenal job along those lines. It's only doing what it must do in terms of the law. There haven't been complaints. There haven't been instances where people have been mistreated based on their immigrant status or, for that matter, any of the other statuses. So as I put in my memo, ordinarily when a council adopts an ordinance, it is to deal with some kind of a need or a problem or an issue or something that's happening out there that needs to be changed. And so for those reasons, I think the enhanced resolution is a great statement that you can make to the community, to all the department heads, to the police department, as to where you stand on individuals based upon their immigrant status. I did, as you know, give a lot of time and thought and consideration to the ordinance, spent obviously many hours with the chief, with the manager, going over that ordinance. If it is the council's desire to move forward with an ordinance as opposed to the resolution, I would encourage you to go with the version that I've redlined for you, because I think I've eliminated or changed items which were issues for the department and the town. But overall, recommendation is for the resolution, and you've got all that in front of you. Just in terms of process, tonight you'll have the discussion on which direction you want to go in. Once you make that decision this evening, then whatever decision you make will be placed on the next agenda for adoption, whether it's policy or advertising for the ordinance.
Okay. Do I have any questions here at the table before I bring it out to you? If there's anybody from the audience who would like to come up and speak, we welcome the opportunity. What I'm going to ask you to do, if there are several people who want to speak, first and foremost, we need you to state your name for the record, and I'd ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
My name is Bonnie O'Connor. I'm a 17-year resident of South Kingstown. I've been working with the group that proposed the ordinance, and I realize that the framework in which we have been thinking from the beginning is that the ordinance is a proactive device, and it's designed to provide protections for both our community and our police force. From what I heard during the work session this evening, I realized that, and from what Mr. Ursillo just said, that perhaps other folks have been thinking of the ordinance as ordinarily something that's reactive to deal with an unmet need or a problem that has been shown to exist. I don't think any of us would suggest that we've had a problem with our police force. Indeed, they have a laudable record of completely non-discriminatory carrying out of their duties. But when I heard the town solicitor ask the question, do we have a problem? Is there something wrong out there? my answer immediately was, yes, we have a problem and there is something wrong out there. The problem is that our immigrant community can no longer trust that they are safe, because the problem that is out there and the thing that is wrong out there is a federal administration that's quixotic, chaotic, changes things on the spur of the moment, has enacted by fiat several statements and pieces of would-be law that have terribly affected immigrant communities' sense of security and safety. And in fact, their actual lives, people were stopped coming into the country. At airports, there was complete pandemonium. No one knows anymore who's safe and who's not. No one is certain whether whatever document they hold makes them safe. Do they have a green card? Can that be canceled at any moment? Are they, if they're in the DACA program, which everyone felt protected by for a while, what happens now? Do they re-up? Do they protest? Do they make themselves known? They're aware that they may place their families and their parents at risk if they become known. It's a terrible sense of chaos. And yes, there is a problem out there. There is something wrong out there. It doesn't originate here. It originates elsewhere. It originates at the federal level, and I've been thinking of the ordinance as a preemptive and protective document that will protect our people and our police. I guess I have to say that because I've worked with immigrant communities both here and in Texas, I know that the difference between a resolution and an ordinance, it means something to us in here. It means something very different to the people who come to the United States by whatever means they come, whether it's to study or with visitor visas or as children who were brought undocumented by parents when they didn't have a chance to say yes or no. They come from countries where people in positions of authority, and in fact people in uniform, are often some of the most feared, most threatening people, and have been some of their most serious persecutors and predators, in fact. And they need to know that there's something behind it except a statement of goodwill. A resolution, by definition, is not enforceable. It doesn't have teeth. A resolution says we're good people and we do good things and we've always done good things and we're going to continue to do good things. And for the immigrant community, that's not worth the paper that it's printed on. You cannot place your trust in it. An ordinance takes it a step further by giving those values, those statements, and that long and laudable history of proper conduct the force of law. So I would urge you to adopt the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Joanne Pope Mellish. I've been a resident here for 34 years in South Kingstown. I want to speak to the specific piece about the police department not doing anything wrong, because I want to reiterate the idea that no, the police department is doing nothing wrong, but a resolution doesn't protect the police department from doing things that incur liability to the town. And that's what I think is one really important issue. An ordinance protects the police from, say, they stop somebody somewhere along the line, and a person is identified, and suddenly ICE is on the phone saying, hold them for an extra day, hold them for a day. Where are we going to hold them? Well, we're going to hold them in our holding cell. Now, one of them trips on a banana peel and cracks his head and becomes injured. That's liability to our police department, and that's an expensive lawsuit. There are several places. One of them is Maricopa County, but that's on the border. There's a place in Arizona, but there's a county in North Carolina, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's a county in North Carolina, which is not a border town, border space. Now, it's a county, but it incurred enormous expense in having to expand its ability to hold, because it decided it had to follow what, when ICE suggested that people be held on detainer, that's not a warrant. Get a judicial warrant, fine. The police department has no liability in doing what it's required to do, but they needed extra space to hold people, and they incurred liability and expense in doing so. So I'm not saying I'm not interested in this also from the point of view of immigrants feeling safe, because I am, but I'm also really interested in the question of liability and expense incurred by the town. And an ordinance would protect the town and the police department, a fine police department doing nothing wrong, from the liability and expense that other locations have incurred. That's my argument. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Mellish, Joanne's husband. I've lived in town since '72, with 4 years when I took a sabbatical into Charlestown from '79 to '83. But I've been part of this town. I've taught in this town. I practice law in this town. I care about this town. I'm an active member of the ACLU. I serve on its executive committee. I do volunteer work for the ACLU. The ACLU is very committed to this ordinance. We helped draft it. It's been a model ordinance throughout the country. South Kingstown is part of this country, part of this state. We are dealing with a federal government where the executive and the Attorney General's office seems to want to deport people and wants to limit the rights of refugees and immigrants. And that's the context where cities and towns and states are trying to affirmatively protect the rights of immigrants and refugees and people who are suspected of being immigrants. Citizens of this country do get held mistakenly, but they get held. And there's a very recent lawsuit here in Rhode Island. $35,000 was paid because a U.S. citizen was detained and held over incorrectly. An ordinance is necessary because it is a law. It's not just your policy. We appreciate this town. We appreciate the resolution that was passed. Those ideas are right on. They're spot on. And we commend you for that. We ask you now to go the step further, to say this is what our community wants. These are our values. We want to protect all of our citizens. We have to remember URI. URI has 500 or 600 students from outside of the country. Many staff people, many professors are here on green cards or other kinds of documents. Those people need this protection. The AAUP of URI has sent a letter, which I don't know if you've received it yet, but they are strongly in favor of this ordinance to protect faculty, staff, and students at URI. UMass is in Amherst, Massachusetts. They have a strong ordinance protecting the residents and students in Amherst. Their example I'd like you to consider and follow. I'd like you to consider the full ordinance as it was presented. There are certain sections of it which our solicitor is recommending that you delete from that. I hope you will look at each of those 4 or 5 items seriously. I hope you'll keep them all in and move to support the full ordinance. But if you decide to subtract a few of them, that's fine. but look at them carefully because they all have a purpose. They all have a purpose, and it's to protect everyone who lives here. We're interested in liberty and justice for all based on our Rhode Island Constitution, our U.S. Constitution, our Pledge of Allegiance to our country and to our flag. This ordinance is supportive of that. It comes from the people up, not from the federal government down. This is democracy in action, and we ask you to support this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Ted Wax. We're relatively new to the community. My wife and I moved here from out of state only about 2.5 years ago, so I will keep my remarks short as a result of that. We support the ordinance. We do not support just the resolution. The resolution was fine as far as it went, but I think we need more, and I'd like to address 2 points made by the town solicitor in terms of why he doesn't think the resolution is necessary. The first is nothing has happened. Well, that's true, and that's wonderful, but the fact that nothing has happened up to now doesn't mean that nothing will happen in the future. It's akin to my saying, well, I'm not going to buy fire insurance for my house because my house has never burned down before. You have to prepare the fact that something may happen. In that case, it's better to have the ordinance in place. The other point was that we've heard no complaints. Well, if you are an immigrant to this country, especially from a place where the law, the police, the government is not friendly, are you going to complain and therefore identify yourself? Not very likely. And so my thought is there may well be potential problems. And we meant well by passing a resolution is really not a sufficient defense. I think we need something stronger just in case, however unlikely, that something may happen in the future. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak on this topic?
Good evening. My name is Veronica Cott. I'm a resident of South Kingstown, and I'm an attorney. I have worked for a long time with immigrants, with civil rights issues, and as an attorney, I recognize very much the very significant difference between an ordinance and a resolution. A resolution, no matter how well-intentioned, no matter how beefed up, is just an expression of principles. And those are wonderful principles. But unfortunately, the national climate and the times that are changing, I think, require us to go beyond a statement of principles and put those principles into law, give them the force of law, which will protect both this town and police department from liability and our community from the distrust that the pressure it will be placed under is likely to elicit. Throughout the country, community after community is being pressured, in fact, to cooperate with ICE and immigration officials in a manner that is potentially illegal. And in fact, in many such communities, courts have upheld the illegality of that action to the detriment of the town and the police department. So again, I would reiterate what previous speakers have said and really urge that we go for an ordinance because that's what's necessary to protect both the integrity of our community, the trust within our community, and this town from the pressures that are likely not to escape us as they haven't escaped other communities. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carol Saja, and I am married to Ted Wax, who spoke just prior. And as he said, we just moved here. I am an educator, and I think my position on this, as well as being in support of everything that has preceded in comments, is that I'm concerned about children, and I am concerned about the position that children of undocumented parents are in on a daily basis. And if we have very clear guidelines in terms of what police can and cannot do, and children are aware of that and their parents are aware of that, I think that we can find children much more comfortable in approaching our police when they are in need, when there's bullying, when there's unfair practices, or even domestic violence or anything that concerns them, that they will not be afraid that somehow their parents will be incriminated by it and unjustly handled. So that is my position on it, and I encourage you to please consider the ordinance as Jeff Mellish presented it. Thank you.
Any further discussion from the audience? Discussion here at the council?
My name is Bill Rosen. I've been a resident of South Kingstown for more than 45 years now. I want to clarify one point. It was mentioned that immigrants or refugees or whatever, or students at URI would be covered by this municipal ordinance or resolution. And I think that's a misconception, because URI is a state entity, has its own police department, and as a consequence, I don't think that the municipality of South Kingstown can create an ordinance or a resolution that's going to affect what goes on at URI. That's my understanding of the situation. I was president of the AUP for a number of years, and that was always told to me, that what goes on at URI and what goes on in South Kingstown are two separate entities. So I'd like to clarify that point, and maybe the solicitor can clarify that further.
When it comes to the law is going to apply equally whether you're on or off the University of Rhode Island campus. There's certainly different standards that are in effect for everything from zoning issues, for instance, that apply outside the university, not inside. But in terms of any action that the South Kingstown Police Department takes, that would apply universally throughout the town. Even if it's a student, I mean, obviously, if the student gets into trouble and does something that's against the law, South Kingstown Police Department, State Police Department would, of course, have jurisdiction in those circumstances.
The university police department would have first call on that.
Well, the University Police Department would call in the South Kingstown Police Department if needed.
Yes.
But I assure you, if a crime is committed, the South Kingstown Police Department would get involved regardless of whether it was a student or if it was on or off campus.
But URI is controlled by the laws of the state of Rhode Island.
Yes, as well as any ordinances of the town of South Kingstown in a criminal context that would involve the police department. Okay, they would be subject.
Thank you.
I appreciate all the work that the solicitor did in coming up with some new language for our resolution that we had passed earlier. I think those improvements are good regardless of whatever else we decide to do. Personally, I agree with the folks who have said that we may not have a problem locally, but we certainly have a problem in the federal government at this stage. The administration seems bent on overreaching. Over this past weekend, the president has, tried to get private organizations to fire people based on their First Amendment speech rights. And I can see that type of overreach continuing into all sectors of life. And I think we do have to protect our residents and all our citizens against those type of infringements. So I would be in favor of us at least having a public hearing on the ordinance. Then we can choose, if we don't want to do that at the next meeting, we can choose to do the resolution at that point as well. So that's where I'm at.
So this has been a tough issue. Initially, I was all about the ordinance, and I still am to a degree. However, in considering parts of this, I do take feedback from our police department that it might be perceived as sort of a bit of an overreach or a micromanaging and saying, this is how we want you to do your job. I can see, though, that there is a necessity for that at times. I don't think that we have an immigration profiling problem in South Kingstown, and nor do I think that our police chief would ever entertain any kind of overreach. I think before we saw it become a problem, he'd probably come to us and say, hey, this is going to be an issue. Let's get in front of it. And I have full faith in him and the police department that that's exactly how they would handle something like that. So I'm a little bit conflicted because I don't want to send the message to our police department that I think I know how to do their job better than they do. But I also feel immense empathy towards this immigrant population in a way that I'm never going to be able to relate to because I'm not in that position. I have a very dear friend who is concerned about her citizenship, and she has 2 young children that she had here. She came here as a child, and a few years when Trump was elected, the first thing she said to me was, if anything ever happens to me, will you take care of my kids? And it was like this heart-wrenching moment where I thought, oh my God, I've never even had to think about that, and never in my life will I ever have to think of that. And I can see the urgency for something like this, and I want to be behind it, and I want to be part of the solution, and on the right side of history for it. So it's really tough in finding that balance, but I would definitely be in favor of, at the very least, bringing it to a public hearing to get some more input from people from both sides, to see the feedback that we get, and perhaps some more insight from our police department in a way we can roll this out or find a compromise to say, look, we're all trying to do the right thing by everybody, and we're all trying to find the right policy. So I like the idea of having a public hearing.
Could I ask you a question, Mike? If, for example, we have this ordinance in place, and there was a directive that came down to the cities and towns, the 39 cities and towns, from either the state level or from the federal level, would that supersede our ordinance, and therefore that would take command, if you will?
It would, yes.
Okay. I
You'd
just
have
wanted to
to
make sure I
obey,
understood
yeah.
that clarification, because
Yes.
it's all well and good for the town of South Kingstown, but if the state changes something or the federal government comes down and gives us a different directive, our hands, I think, if that situation, become tied.
In this context, yes.
Okay.
I believe that's also recognized in the ordinance as it's written.
There's a reference to that.
Okay.
I'll just make a couple of comments here. There are some pretty complex issues that come before the 5 of us, and I don't think any of us are equipped for all of them. And that's when we rely on staff. And in this case, staff is giving us advice, and I think they're more qualified to give us direction. Frankly, I was happy with the first ordinance. If this council was inclined to beef it up with the solicitor's resolution. If the council was inclined to increase the resolution with the solicitor's recommendations, I could go along with that, but I would be opposed to the ordinance.
I've been struggling with this for a while. First of all, I feel that our police department is doing a great job. I have complete faith in our department and our chief. We've had a discussion in the past regarding this, him and I. But for me, when I go back and forth about it, I know that we're not. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're doing their job. I completely understand that. They're very professional. They're enforcing the laws. What I'm struggling with is the fact that what would passing this ordinance really do especially with the fact that we are currently doing our job professionally and obeying the law. So if this ordinance would make people in our community feel safer, I would be definitely open to having that discussion at our next meeting, or having an open, bringing it to the public to get their comments on it.
I guess now we would proceed.
I have a question because I share with the council the concern that somehow it might be read by our police department as proposing an ordinance as having a lack of faith or confidence in their capabilities and in what they've done already and will no doubt continue to do. If that could be addressed in some other way, for example, like passing a resolution that says that the town applauds the history of our police department and its non-discriminatory practices, finds in them a guideline for how we should all move forward, and has complete confidence in them, I would suggest that we could do that as well, because I don't think we should leave the police department with any sense that any of this has to do with mistrust of them and their motives and their behavior, because it doesn't.
Thank you. There's no further discussion or further discussion at the table. We need to go ahead.
So, basically listening to comments, it sounds like at least the majority of the council is interested in going forward with some form of ordinance. What I would suggest is that we have Dale advertise the red-lined version of the ordinance so that you'd have the whole thing in front of you plus the changes I'm recommending, and that way when you get to a hearing, you'll be able to act on any or all pieces of it. And so we need to do that for the October 23rd meeting because we need time to advertise. Plus, your October 10th meeting is on a Tuesday because Monday's the holiday, and I'm not going to be here on October 10th, but we're going to need the time for advertising anyhow. So,
Mike, I have a question. When you started your statement here, you said that it sounds like there's a majority that would be in favor of the ordinance?
That want to have the discussion on the ordinance. I heard 3 people say they wanted to have a discussion.
Okay, thank you.
I have no idea how you're ultimately going to vote.
I hear you. Thank you.
Well, no. Just to clarify, when I say advertise the red line, I mean advertise the whole ordinance with the red line changes in it, so that everyone can see the whole ordinance, plus everyone can see the changes that I'm recommending. That way we'll be covered.
I like that. Can we add the language that was just suggested about applauding in some type of preamble clause?
Yeah, we can add a preamble clause along. Yeah, because we have several whereas clauses in there. I can certainly add another whereas clause.
Well,
I think you wanted to specify kind of what you were thinking, right, on the preamble?
I didn't hear you.
I trust Mike to be able to develop the language that recognizes the efforts of our...
And if you want, or any of you are free to just email me some language. I mean, we obviously can't discuss it as a group, but if you have some ideas on what should be in the whereas with regard to the suggestion concerning appreciation, by all means send them to me, and otherwise I'll certainly come up with something.
And I would make...
So you'd make a motion to do an order of advertising for the entire redlined ordinance, along with another paragraph in the preamble recognizing the service of the department and appreciation for the way they have treated individuals based upon their immigration status. How's that?
But would
So
this
moved.
to go forward to create the ordinance that evening, or would...
You would actually have a hearing on October 23rd to discuss whether you're going to adopt the ordinance that evening, yes.
Okay.
So I made that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Seeing none, then we will have a meeting that Dale will advertise on the 23rd. I'm speaking for myself. I am opposed to the ordinance. Okay. The meeting, because whether we advertise, we can either, at that point, come up with either whether it's going to be a resolution or an ordinance.
There will definitely have to be a hearing and a vote on whether or not you want to go forward with the actual ordinance. Yes.
Okay.
On October 23rd.
Okay. Moving on to item 7C. This is a communication dated September 18th of this year concerning a petition requesting the implementation of traffic calming and safety improvements in the Narragansett Avenue East neighborhood. Has been received, placed on file, and as a council, we will further direct. Please come to the podium and state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less.
My name is Margaret Rankin Impagliazzo. I've had throat surgery, so just bear with me. This is as good as it gets. I appreciate the council taking their time to listen to our petition today. I have lived at 5 Peckham Avenue since 1954. I've lived in the town of South Kingstown since 1952. I'm not a politician, a lawyer, or an engineer. I'm just a 67-year-old, very observant, intelligent woman who's passionately concerned about the issues of Narragansett Avenue East and as a taxpayer of South Kingstown. Our petition is fairly straightforward. After over 25 years of telephone, phoning, emailing, snail mailing, different issues, both to the town and to the state, you can understand the acute frustration and disappointment that is affecting me and many of my neighbors who have done the same. Every person with whom I have spoken has placated me or not responded at all. The usual response I get to phone calls is, "Thank you for calling. We understand your concerns. We'll look into it. We'll get back to you." Then nothing happens. No looking into it, no hearing, no written response, no return phone call. So for that reason, I tell you that I have been placated to death. Narragansett Avenue East is a very poorly designed, unsafe neighborhood, period. Everyone agrees that this is so. However, no one's willing to take the initiative and responsibility to fix the problems. 25 years ago, the state of Rhode Island DOT promised me and several other people in the hearing that there would be no trucks off the exit of Route 1. They lied. They also maintained the area for about 5 years, and then they failed to renew the landscaping contract. So for the last 17 years, I have personally maintained that area. The town says it's the state's responsibility, and the state says it's the town's responsibility. So who's responsible? Not me. I didn't get hired for the job or paid the conservative amount that I estimate the town has saved of $25,000 over the 17 years that I've maintained that area. The design was flawed from the beginning, and I can elaborate further on that if you'd like, but I'm going to keep to my 3 minutes. Further down Narragansett Avenue East near Kimberly, there was a study done at taxpayer expense, but nothing was ever done to solve the problem. The survey was only a response to the question of whether or not there could be a stop sign or speed bumps at Kimberly and River Heights. That was 20-plus years ago when traffic was significantly less and long before GPS alternative routes were enabled. It did not address the area of Kimberly that it's just a huge area with no clear direction for traffic. This is where our neighbor Faith was killed. While the things that we are proposing probably wouldn't have saved Faith, we are not about to accept that someone else may get injured in this unsafe predicament. Narragansett Avenue East If you visit Narragansett Avenue East, you can stand at the very last house on the right going down the hill, and you can see a straight line to Mumford Road. The road could be straightened without taking houses or property or anything. It's swamp, so it could be straightened straight to Mumford Road. Kimberly Road could exit onto a regular road with a stop sign instead of this big round no man's land that's down there. It's easy to see that this is possible. There needs to be a study that's a comprehensive study that tells us what a solution can be done. We all know what we'd like to see done, and we'd all like to see a really comprehensive solution instead of constant Band-Aids and no, we can't do that because. The study that was done 18 to 20 years ago said they couldn't put a stop sign at River Heights in Kimberly because people would get rear-ended in bad weather. Well, I find fault with that study because people going down the hill have to stop to turn left to go into River Heights or stop to turn right to go into Border. They have to stop. So what difference does it make if you put a stop sign there or not? So I think the study was flawed, and I think the study was done so that they could tell us, the neighbors, that nothing could be done. The sidewalk needs to be extended to the Narragansett town line. It's easy to see that this is possible. The neighborhood needs a complete fix to the situation. The crosswalks need to be painted. The town painted them 25 years ago when the Wakefield cutoff was redesigned and done, and since that time they have never been painted. One of them at River Heights goes directly into a tree. You walk across the sidewalk and you face a tree. It leads nowhere. The sidewalks at Peckham, the sidewalks at River Heights, the sidewalks at Border, and the sidewalks at Kimberly need to be painted so that at least drivers know that there's pedestrians. The street is a series of dips and downs where the drains are, and there are holes in the street near Peckham, and cracks on Peckham Avenue and holes in Narragansett Avenue East from the heavy trucks. These need to be filled, but again, the town says it's the state land, the state says it's the town land, and we have no man's land. This is just a temporary fix until the town can fix the road properly and completely. I'd like to acknowledge that the South Kingston Police have done a very credible job since Faith's death of diminishing speeding, delivery trucks cutting through, drunks driving through and tossing out their bottles. This was due to the increased patrols, and we are truly grateful that at last the police have come over and done something about this issue. Also, the reduction of these things has happened because the tourists have gone. So now we're just with us regular folks on the road. But in June, they're going to be back again, even maybe sooner. Sometimes they come back in May. So we need to have these resolved prior to next year's onslaught of tourism. In addition to all of us neighbors who walk our dogs, ride our bicycles, there's numerous other folks who use the road. The Prout Track Team, the marathoners, the bicycle clubs. There was a race 2 weeks ago on our street. Runners who use the hill for training. There are elderly people, disabled people. We're located between two elementary schools. It's another accident waiting to happen. The town needs to fix this. Nothing we have asked is impossible if only the town looks into this with an eye towards finding a solution instead of looking for reasons why solutions can't be done. We would like the town to meet with the neighborhood, make a resolution, look into the options that we have available, and do the very best that the town can do for the neighborhood. We do know what would work and wouldn't. We live in the mess every day. There are issues, all of which can be fixed. We are a united group of very responsible, educated, and dedicated people who have undertaken this position as a leap for faith. Isn't it sad that we had to go to this extent to get the attention of our town? There's another consideration that the town seems not to care about. That's property values. Who wants to move into this neighborhood the way it is? An ill-maintained, trash-filled, speeding, noisy street. Our property values are decreasing instead of increasing, and when our property values decrease, it doesn't make us happy. And it shouldn't make the town happy either, because the town then is losing tax dollars. We have been disregarded for a very long time, and this practice has to stop. We're asking the town to take our petition seriously, develop a plan, meet with the neighborhood, and make the necessary changes and improvements to make our neighborhood safe. Please make a resolution to see that we get a solution for this issue. I'd be happy to answer any questions. There are other people that would like to speak, and we hope this can be resolved before someone else gets injured. Thank you for listening to our Leap of Faith petition this evening. We appreciate your time.
Anybody else like to come up to the podium with any comments?
Yes, my name is John Pagliazzo. I've lived in South Kingston for 35 years, and I've addressed this problem a number of times in the past. I'm on a first-name basis with Mr. Alfred. We're discussing this, and I've been trying to find a path to a solution here. I have a primary interest in pedestrian safety. 25 years ago, there was a traffic study done. I don't think another traffic study is going to help. The chief has been out there, and he's done a survey of the speed. Most of the traffic is under 30 miles an hour. So speeding isn't really a justification for a stop sign or something like that, okay? What has become obvious is recently the town of Narragansett lined the edge of the road, okay? So now there's a shoulder up near the elementary school, which is about 3 feet wide. It narrows to 2 by the time you get to the town line, and really narrows down to nothing, where it crosses over the river in the vicinity where the fatal accident occurred. I live at the bottom of the hill, so I'm constantly watching, school buses trying to get through there on a bike, with a truck or a car coming in the opposite direction. The only real approach that they have is to cross the yellow line to avoid the pedestrian or the biker. I think a reasonable approach, and I've been at the last 2 traffic review committee meetings, just last week and in August, discussing this with Chief Jaber and the other members of the committee. I'm trying to figure out a path where I don't get thrown out of the room, okay? And that's why I'm focusing on just pedestrian safety. Now, there is no, the road, that section of the road, meets the minimum requirements legally. So that's not an issue. So to have another traffic study is not going to prove anything except cost $20,000 or $30,000, okay? What we can see is where the shoulder is, even though there is no requirement for a shoulder on a rural road, okay, widening the shoulder, at least on the north side of Narragansett Avenue, where we currently have the sidewalk from the top of the hill to Kimberly, would make it safer, okay? In the sense that I'm saying it can be safer than the minimal legal requirements, okay? So you want to enhance safety more than you're required by law to do, okay? It's to do that, okay, to expand it, I'm not trying to tell anyone how to do it, but what the highway department needs is some direction from the town council. And if there's labor involved by the engineers there to look at what it would cost, how much work is involved, that would require funding for them. So, I can't tell them how to do their job. The chief can help us, but only in the sense of law enforcement, which he has, okay, with the increased patrols and electronic signs to advise people as they approach, okay, how fast are they going. So that works great. But I think some physical improvements would go a long way. And it's probably, well within the purview of the highway department to look at this and make an assessment of what would be better, how much it would cost, what are the trade-offs. And this could be done in short order. It's not going to require a $30,000 contract with a private firm. So I hope you consider that. I prepared a letter, which had probably arrived this morning, okay, which formally requests the town council to provide direction, and if so, if needed, some funding for the highway department to do engineering studies to come up with a solution. There's a number of opportunities they can take. I'm sure they know what's possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Robert Impagliazzo. Margaret is my wife. John is my brother. 25 years ago, the town and the state decided to lower Route 1 18 feet. And when they did that, they were in my yard. They were there for 4 years. And while they were there, we had problems with them keeping their promises. I kept asking them, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? And finally, one day, the project manager said, well, Doc, you'll see it when you see it. That was a mistake on his part. From that point on, I called or visited the governor's office every day. Okay? Nothing was too much for me to do. I accused people of not being present. These are people who sent me letters, but I could never reach them on the phone. Okay? Finally, the head of the DOT said, I want to have a meeting with this guy. And the project manager said, no, you don't. And he said, why? And he said, because he's only asking for what you promised. Now I am asking for what the state promised. The state promised that this would not be a shortcut to the beach. The state promised there would be no trucks. The state promised that they would watch the speed on this road. They have done none of that. The time has come for the state to keep its promise. The state's promise was to maintain the area where they turned a house lot into an island. We can't do it anymore. We shouldn't do it anymore. We are not being paid to do it anymore. I don't care whether the state owns it or the town owns it because it's between a state road and a town road. Somebody owns it. And it's up to that person to maintain it, not up to us. All we are asking for is for the state to keep the promises in the contract that it made. That should not be too much of a problem. You don't get to make a contract and then just walk away from it. That's not the idea. Okay? So all I'm asking tonight is the state step up and keep the promises that it made, because Narragansett Avenue is collapsing because the weight of the sand and gravel trucks that travel on the road. It's not supposed to be an exit for buses. They should be exiting at 108. But every day, from about 7 in the morning to 10 at night, we can sit in our house and hear the famous words, bus is turning. Okay? That does not add to my property value. So again, all I'm asking is for the state to keep its promise and step up to the plate and do what it said it was going to do. Thank you for your attention.
Would anybody else like to comment? Please come forward.
Hi, my name is James Burns. I live at 240 Narragansett East Avenue. First of all, I'd like to say I have 4 children. I served 23 years in the military. I moved here back in '93 in this house. Before I moved there used to be this very large stone, probably about 600 pounds, 4 feet tall, 3 feet wide. It was across the street by the yellow house just before the curve where that person, Faye, got hit. And I was told the first accident there that I recall, somebody was reaching for fries in their front seat on that double S curve, and they smacked that 600-pound stone. I don't know what happened to them. But anyways, probably my little daughter that was born in Frankfurt, she was about 4 years old, so I was up there living about 2 years. She was in the house, and but I noticed when I looked outside through my window of my dining room toward the street, there used to be this neighbor up the street on River Heights. He had this little Shih Tzu. He used to let it run anywhere it wanted. Well, her being 4 years old saw that little dog across the street. As I saw her crossing that street, my heart started racing. And as soon as I saw her, something caught my eye. I looked up toward the intersection at River Heights, and I saw this car coming down the hill. There was a female in that car, approximately 40 years old, blonde hair. Still remember it like it was yesterday. She was in an SUV, and I know she can't see that kid because there's several big trees, and she's coming around that corner. And here's my little girl holding that little Shih Tzu against her chest with her arm out like a cross guard, trying to tell that woman as she's coming around the corner to stop and let me pass. My heart almost broke. Excuse me. She sees it, and you can see the, oh my God, and you just see her she tried to pitch it left, but of course the turn is right, coming down. As she tries to correct, she's going sideways, skidding around my little girl. I don't want to go further into that. So, about like 4 years later, in the middle of the night, approximately about midnight, probably really around 1 or 2, I hear this car coming down the hill. And probably right around at the Kimberly intersection, they were drinking, and they came around the corner, and I guess because those sidewalks that they were telling you about, they have no markings, so they probably didn't see him in the night. So they ran up on him, and as they tried to correct it, they were so doggone drunk, they misjudged. They hit a telephone pole head on, spun around backwards, took out my mailbox, just missing a telephone pole, and landed halfway up in my driveway with my wife screaming in my ear. Okay, the next time, several years after that, in the middle of the day on a weekend, there was another skidding and stuff. They were drinking again, but it was in the middle of the day. It's in the afternoon, sun's out. They ended up taking out my mailbox and landed halfway up in my yard. And I could hear the cling, 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 the bottles all being thrown, just like the other one when my wife was screaming in my ear. I went up and I asked for stop signs up at Kimberly, going up and down, because I told them when they start to come down here, down the hill, when they start to come down the hill, they're picking up speed. And everybody knows it's tougher to stop going downhill. And when you got trees on the right and left around these bends, you can't see what's around there. And it's going to take you twice as long to stop if you're going downhill. So, but like the other person before me, they said that would be an inconvenience. I told them it's a no-brainer that somebody's going to get killed here. I do this for a living in the military. All right? We set things up. We see what they got, and we analyze. It didn't take much to know that a double S curve and no stop sign, and people can do what they want. Basically, they're coming down the hill. They had a few drinks. Some are heading back to Warwick. Some are coming from the bars. And the way I see it is, first of all, I was cutting trees down when I first moved to my place. But I was told by the town hall when they came to visit me that he comes up on my driveway and he says, "You see over here next to your driveway, about 5 feet from your driveway here, past your little peach tree?" I says, "Yeah," and that's like 25 feet from the road. He says, that's town property. I said, "You got to be kidding me." He says, "No. A long time when they put this road in, it was supposed to be a straight line. But because they ended up putting it in as a double S curve, the actual property of the town is at the edge of the road across the street. And on your side, it comes all the way up onto your property, and you're like 5 feet on the top of, and I'm like 25 feet from the road. So the whole road is messed up. And it really comes down, this is the town's responsibility. It really is. If they messed up putting in the road, you got to just put in the extra care. You got to put in that stop sign if you want to stop somebody from, I hate to say it, from dying in another 20 years. Because it's going to happen. My kid almost got killed. This woman almost got killed. I got brushed by a car walking my dog on the edge of the grass coming where she was hit. A car nicked my arm with a mirror. It's a very, very dangerous place. And all you need to do is live there for a few weeks or a year, and I'm sure you'll come under the understanding. I walked down that hill and I saw Faye. I saw her on that stretcher. The cops didn't even know that car had lost control, taken her out, knocked her probably 40 feet out of her shoes that were found 40 feet from her body, and that car was in the woods. And they didn't even know the car was in the woods. They thought it was gone until they found out that the people were still stuck in there because the trees had pinned their doors closed. We see people that live there every day. We don't talk to each other a whole lot, but we wave, and we're there if they need us. We're really there. And we're proud of this town, and I just hope you do the right thing and put a stop sign there, because them going down that hill would stop them a third of the way down. And if they came up, it would stop them 3/4 of the way up, because we see Lamborghinis and Corvettes, motorcycles flying up and flying down. They love that little S-curve and those twists. I know, I got a motorcycle. I know what they're doing, and I know why. So if you really want to stop this thing, you really need to do a stop sign up there. You got to cut their speed by 10 miles an hour, and that's what a stop sign will do, just enough. And if I could, out of my driveway, if they could put one of those like nice round mirrors so I could see the headlights around the corner before I pull out. I got a blind driveway sign, but I'm literally like 75 feet from that corner. And when they come around at 35 miles an hour or more, it's very dangerous for me to pull out. I got to look both ways. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further comments from anybody in the audience? Please come forward and state your name.
Good evening. My name is Carrie. I live off of Border Drive, and I'm one of the families that has the elderly parents and the disabled child. And my son has the special needs, and he has no safety sense at all. And the amount of traffic and the amount of speeding that goes up and down that road is like atrocious. I wish I had recorded some of the sounds that we hear at night so you guys could have a taste of like what we hear every night. I would like as Kelly mentioned and many other people, the crosswalk is in the wrong area. And then I would like a stop sign put that at Border and one at River Heights too, to stop or to slow down at least the traffic that's going down Narragansett East. But it's like the South County Speedway. I did have the electric sign from the South Kingstown police department in my yard, and it was fantastic. I could see like the cars coming down and look over at the sign and see like how fast they were going the times that I was taking my dog out, which was a lot. But it's a big cluster, the road, and it was just really sad that it took the death of someone so special for us to, get this going and have a resolution. But thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Any further discussion here?
Steve, I have a question about the ownership of the road, this debate between the town or the state.
When the crossover was put in and the deceleration lane on the northbound lanes, as you come off on that exit, you come to Narragansett Avenue East, still within the state right-of-way. As you turn to the left to go to Old Tower Hill, you are still on the state right-of-way, and it's been marked as an extension of Narragansett Avenue East. However, it's still within the state right-of-way and is a portion of the state highway system. If you go to the east, obviously, you're then on Narragansett Avenue East that did exist before the crossover was eliminated. I agree that there's difficulty with the state in providing the maintenance within the state right-of-way, and in fact, there's a serious pothole there now that we've been in contact to have them repair, which is close to the bridge itself. But that portion is part of the state right-of-way. It is an extension of Narragansett Avenue East, but it's on the state road network. So we need to be in contact with state maintenance on that. Two things that I think are important is that the studies that have been done, there hasn't been enough of a traffic change in that area that would meet the warrants necessary for the placement of signs. In addition to the concern that staff has associated with the hill that the people are traveling on. Most of the problem that we're running into is excessive speed and impaired driving. I think that what we want to do at this point is to have a discussion with Narragansett and find out what improvements they're making, what improvements can we deal with as far as pedestrian accessibility. Since the opening of the bike path in Narragansett to get into the bike system, the O'Neill bike path, there is going to be more traffic coming down that street trying to get into the bike path itself in Narragansett. So we need to take a look at that with Narragansett and see what improvements, if any, can be made. We have to also look at whether or not we're being impacted with any of the changes that we may want to make as far as coastal is concerned or any of the wetlands that would be in proximity. The distance from Mr. Impagliazzo's driveway to the town line is about 160 feet. So there's not a lot of distance from where the sidewalk ends right now on Narragansett Avenue East and the town line. But we can take a look at that. We have installed additional signage. We are using the signboards and we are recording the speed so that we can get a better idea as to time of day and travel to have better police security on that road. But it's the same problem that we're running into on any connecting road, whether it's Middlebridge or whether it's Narragansett Avenue or really any of the other main rural roads that we have in the community, such as Tuckertown or Broad Rock or South Road. So we will do that. I will determine if there are crosswalks that do need to be painted, and we will attempt to do that. One of the suggestions made in the petition was the creation of a bike lane. Without changing that entire road, there isn't sufficient width to be able to put bike lanes in both directions on that street. Plus, with the excessive speed that we have now, I'm not sure that that would be an appropriate solution. I will have the Traffic Commission, in conjunction with the Police Department and the Public Services Department, determine what would be potential items that could be done in that area, and for those to, we will report back to the council on those matters.
Steve, I have a question. We heard that it was originally designed to be a straight road to Mumford instead of the double S. What was the reasoning behind the double S as opposed to doing a straight road?
That's the first I've heard of that. That road, I mean, I've been here 42 years. I don't think that road's changed other than the crossover in that period of time. So I'm not aware of how that road was installed. That's something I could go back and find out when the road acceptance was done. I can take a look at that and I'll report back to you on that.
Please come up to the podium.
I have something to add. I understand that you believe that that's state land on Narragansett Avenue East. However, that doesn't explain Peckham Avenue. Peckham Avenue has been there since before I was born, and it's still there. It's the street that I live on, and the town doesn't maintain Peckham Avenue either. They don't maintain Peckham Avenue, the state doesn't maintain Narragansett Avenue East, and nobody except me maintains that Center Island. And I can tell you what happened with the sidewalks. When the construction of Route 1 happened, the state did a plot map, and they didn't indicate any elevations on the plot map. So when they went to construct the exit ramp in Narragansett Avenue East, it was an oops moment. They said, oh, well, we have to reduce the angle of the hill by about 15%. So they dug away the hill. The hill was a lot steeper. They dug away the hill, and because they dug away the hill, that gave me that wall around my property that makes me feel like I live in a moat. Okay? And at the same time, the state is the one that put in the sidewalk all the way down to Faith Kemp's house. If you notice, it's cement to a certain point. And then the town decided, well, since the state put a sidewalk to nowhere, that the town should continue the sidewalk down and continued it down to Kimberly. And it's not a standard sidewalk. It's a tar sidewalk in amongst the trees going through the curves down. So it really the whole road needs to be fixed. The dips and gullies, I mean, part of the problem with the cars going down is it's a dip and gully, and then you go into the S curves at the bottom. It is not straight by any means. And if you stand at the last house, I hope you come visit, stand at the last house on Narragansett East on the right. You can stand in their driveway and see where it would be a straight shot to Mumford Road if the town wanted to do that. And there's no eminent domain issues because there's no houses from that last house on Narragansett East all the way to Mumford Road. There's no houses. It's just swamp and forest and trees and mess. So that's how we got the sidewalk issue. The sidewalk was kind of thrown in there because the state put a sidewalk that went nowhere, and the town said, okay, well, we got to do something with this. So they gave us this tar sidewalk the rest of the way down to Kimberly. But I want to know who's responsible for maintaining that center island and who's responsible for maintaining Peckham Avenue. Peckham Avenue is a town road. John Schock sent me a map that shows sort of, it's a really terrible map, sort of where the state property and the town property is. And according to John Schock's map, Peckham Avenue is still a town road, and yet it gets no maintenance whatsoever. Not swept, the crack's not filled, the hole's not filled, there's a sewer cover there that the sides are caving in. Nobody does anything. So I'm asking you, please, 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 make a resolution, research it, but most importantly, make a plan to take care of this. We can't keep going on like this.
With all due respect, Peckham Avenue is a town road, and it has been maintained by the town. You and I had a discussion when you weren't satisfied with the stone seal that was done.
Yeah, that's another thing. You decided to seal let me finish. You decided to seal the road, hired an inferior contractor, and we all got tar on our cars, on our wheels, and tracked into our house. And when I complained, you answered that yes, he was an inferior contractor, your department, not you personally, yes, he was an inferior contractor and he was going to come do it again. And that's when I said, he screwed it up the first time. Why are you going to have him screw it up the second time?
My point to you is that the town has provided maintenance on Peckham Avenue, and I think you'll agree. You may not be satisfied with the level of maintenance that was done, but it is being provided with the same service levels that the other town roads in that area.
Well, let me give you an example. The town filled the cracks on Narragansett Avenue going down the hill. Did the town fill the cracks on Peckham Avenue? No. They never even entered Peckham Avenue. They were out there, and I asked them what their contract was, and they said from Narragansett Avenue East down the hill. So if you look, you can go look at Narragansett Avenue East. You'll see that the cracks.
I'm not looking to argue with you. I'm just stating the simple fact that we do maintain that road. It may not be to your standard, but we do maintain that road.
I don't have very high standards because I do a lot of the maintenance myself, but I do expect the cracks to be filled, and they are not. So please, pay us a visit.
Thank you.
Well, I think we did get comment from the manager that he's going to have discussions with the Traffic Commission, the Highway Department, and we'll work toward resolutions.
We'll also look to Narragansett to find out if
Right.
there's any common solutions, Joe.
So I think that would probably be a good place to start, in addition to looking through some of those marking of the crosswalks that had been discussed. And once we get to the bottom of the investigation here, it will come back to the council once the preliminary investigation is complete, and then we can bring it forward to each and every one of you if you'd like.
I just have a couple of comments to make. I agree with, restriping crosswalks is something very simple. It's low-hanging fruit we can accomplish relatively quickly. But I don't agree that we need another traffic study. All the decisions that I make up here are data-based, and what the staff are telling me is that there is no data to support enough of a traffic change for a traffic study. And likewise, as you indicated earlier, Margaret, that there was a traffic study done 25 years ago and you felt it was flawed when the outcome came. So I would be concerned that we'd have another study, and if it produced similar results, that you might feel the same way, and then we would have spent $25,000, $30,000 on a study and not been satisfied with the results. The studies are meant to be objective, and I would assume that 25 years ago, the results of that were objective. And what we've reviewed, I just don't see a significant change to warrant spending money on another study. I'm not saying that there are not changes needed. I completely agree. And I also want to point out, I live right over here on Winter Street, and I don't think I've seen anybody come seal the cracks on my street, so I don't think that you're alone in feeling that your street's not maintained, but I don't take that to mean my street's not maintained. I think each street gets different attention based on its needs and how frequently it's traveled, and frankly, I trust the staff to assess that when it needs to be addressed. I know you might not agree, but that's how I felt about that. We kind of joked, not even joked, but theorized different things that we could do. How could we think outside the box? We talked about Can we make it a dead-end street? Can we, put in a stop sign? What would warrant that? And I don't think that anybody here is taking that lightly, or anybody is not thinking or considering all the options. I'm open to whatever we can afford and whatever our town staff say is going to make that street safer. And right now they're saying a study is not going to make that safer. But they do recognize there are things we can do. And I think working with Narragansett, looking at solutions, and trusting the staff to come back to us and say, hey, this is how we can make this safer. And frankly, that's where I'm going to take my cues from.
One more comment on the maintenance of the roads is we get presented with a capital improvement program every budget year, and there are streets that are slated that need more care than others. I can tell you that where I live, for instance, was on the capital improvement program for this year and got pushed to next year. Not the street I live on, a main road to it. Got pushed to next year because some other road needed more care than the one that I use the most. So it's a thoughtful process as far as the maintenance goes. We're presented with a capital improvement program, and we usually will approve it based on the recommendation of staff. I see the numbers, the money that we spend, and I see the work that gets done. I think our staff does a great job at maintenance.
Comments here at the table? Oh, come up to the podium and state your name. And then we'll be moving on to the next agenda item at this point because I think we have a resolve at this point right now.
My name is Robert Impagliazzo. I have a question for the solicitor. When the speeding sign was put in, it was put in the wrong place because people stopped at the stop sign at the top of the ramp, and then it took their speed as it went down Narragansett Avenue East. It was then moved to below Border Avenue. Are you telling me that the speed that was clocked below Border Avenue does not indicate excessive speed and therefore does not warrant a stop sign? Is that your position, that the people traveling down this road as if it was the Indianapolis 500 are just not going fast enough to warrant a stop sign?
I'm not aware of where the stop signs were placed, but stop signs are not, the speed is not the reason to put a stop sign. A stop sign is not a traffic calming measure. And what we have to be concerned with the placement of stop signs is meeting what a warrant would be. Warrants look at what the number of cars and interactions that occur at an intersection on an hourly basis over an extended period of time. Those things are taken into consideration by the Public Services Department when they study a request for a stop sign. Conditions of the road are also a concern on the placement of a stop sign, such as the exaggerated hill that you have there, and it creates the excessive speeds. Just because you have excessive speeds, don't assume that putting a stop sign is that somebody is going to be able to stop that vehicle if they're not aware that the stop sign's there. So I can't answer your question. I'm not sure where the signs were placed. They're placed through the Public Services Department based at the location that they find as appropriate. If you have a specific question, you can ask that.
Yes. Then why are speed bumps not possible as traffic calming events for the excessive speed going down that road?
Excessive speed is not going to create the warrant necessary for a stop sign placement.
How about a speed bump? How many people have to be killed or injured before you think it's warranted? Give me a number, please.
We do not use speed bumps on any municipal road. I'm not sure that there's any place in the country that you'll see people using speed bumps, particularly where there's excessive speed potential, because the vehicles become airborne and will lose control of the vehicle.
And therefore they would slow down. If you go through the neighborhood leading to South County Museum, you'll find there are speed bumps in that neighborhood. Why there and not here?
I'm not sure why that's not in the town of South Kingstown.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. If there's no other further discussion at the table, I'd like to entertain a motion on 7C.
I'll make a motion to place item 7C on file and send it to the Public Services Department. Also send a copy to the Bike Ped Advisory Committee for their consideration as they look at potentially creating a plan to address some of these problem areas.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any oppositions? Seeing none. Moving forward to 7D is a communication dated September 19th from Dr. Fran Alexakos, tendering her resignation from the Economic Development Committee. It is received, placed on file, and we shall further direct.
I'll make a motion to place communication 7D on file and to send Dr. Alexakos a letter of appreciation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Communication E, dated September 5th, from Dennis Bowman on behalf of Friends of Green Hill Pond, requesting the town authorize matching funding of $25,000 for their proposed project to improve the water quality at Green Hill Pond. We have received it and placed on file, and we are further directing as follows. Please come up to the podium and state your name.
Yes, my name is Dennis Bowman on behalf of Friends of Green Hill Pond, a group that is simply caring about improving the water quality of one of our salt ponds. Before I get started, if I could just recognize all the people who have come out for support here. If you all could stand up, that would be great. Thank you very much. Appreciate your support. And secondly, I wanted to recognize Dr. John King, Professor of Oceanography, who's been our technical consultant throughout this process as we've shaped the proposal you're seeing tonight. Dr. King. Again, thanks everybody for coming out tonight, and thank you for your attention. You should have received a document. It's like this, Improving Water Quality in Green Hill Pond. If you haven't, I have extras here. That's what I'm going to be quickly going through with my presentation. We believe there are many actions that are necessary in order to clean up Green Hill Pond. There's two main contaminants, as everybody knows. There's nitrogen and there's bacteria. Both are at excessively high levels. The nitrogen problem has been extensively studied by the town, by the state, and various proposals have been developed over the years and are being enacted. Bacteria problem is different, and it's one of the reasons we've focused on that as our first project. Our aim is to reduce the high bacteria that today and for the last 23 years have prevented shellfishing in Green Hill Pond, have basically made the shellfish in Green Hill Pond inedible or unsafe to eat. It has nothing to do with nitrogen. It's strictly a metric based on bacteria counts. So bacteria is really important. In addition to shellfishing, the state, as you know, sets standards for bacteria for water contact and other sports. So it's an important element. We're not trying to solve the nitrogen problem here tonight. We're trying to make some progress on bacteria. So let me turn to page 2, which is our agenda. Quickly, and I mean quickly, we're going to review the key characteristics of the bacteria problem because it's important to understand what we're trying to fix in order to design the solution. We're going to describe why improving the water circulation is important, outline the proposed project and how it has been vetted, respond to a few of the frequently asked questions, and finally ask for your support. First, the bacteria problem is not what most people think, as can be seen on page 3. This spreadsheet comes directly from the DEM, Department of Water Quality, and it shows by station, and the station locations are in the last page if you're interested. But it shows by stations that they measure, and there's 13 stations that are used to measure bacteria level in Green Hill Pond. They've done it for years. And what this chart shows you is that with one exception, 14C, the bacteria levels, the average bacteria level in Green Hill Pond is safe for shellfishing. Let me repeat, the average bacteria level in Green Hill Pond is safe for shellfishing. However, there are two metrics that have to be met, the average and the peak. And the peak is where Green Hill Pond falls apart, as shown on the next page, page 4. Unfortunately, the peak levels are driven by wet weather events that wash stormwater, not only in the streams, but throughout the pond watershed into the pond. And there's two things that are happening. One is, as you can see in the charts there, the numbers are getting higher year by year on the peak levels. The second phenomenon, as you see on the not to exceed line, is the standards for the state have gotten tighter. So as a result, you're having today, or at least in 2015, 10 of the 13 monitoring stations being unable to meet shellfishing standards. That's why shellfishing is banned, and that's why water contact after rainfall events are riskier, let's say. It's important to note there's a widespread nature of the bacteria problem, and it's driven by the sources of bacteria, as shown on page 5. This comes from a DEM study in 2003 that did DNA analysis of bacteria sources by type of creature, let's say. And it varies by location, but overall, roughly 75% of the bacterial contaminants were found to come from wildlife and birds. Wildlife and birds. These sources are obviously widely dispersed throughout the pond watershed. So you have a combination of rainfall events that come from throughout the watershed and bird and wildlife deposits coming from throughout the watershed, which drives you, it's not a point solution problem. It is a non-point solution or a widely dispersed problem that needs to be fixed. And we need an approach that fits that. And that approach, we believe, is improved water circulation. As you can see on page 6.
Dennis, excuse me, I have one question on 5 before you leave.
Yeah, please.
Is there any new data since 03?
No, not from DNA.
Okay.
We asked because we'd certainly like to see it, but...
Thank you.
I have one quick question there, too.
Sure.
One of the pie charts, I think it's called Unnamed Brook 2.
Yep.
Has a human of 29%.
I know.
Is that based off of septic systems, or?
In all likelihood, it's leaking septic systems or cesspools upstream from that brook. Okay. Again, this is 14-year-old data. Maybe some of that has been fixed through various upgrades and so forth. But I think the bigger picture is looking at the green and the purple and how big the sections are for the bird and wildlife populations.
I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I did have a question on that.
Sure.
I know ultimately we're looking at possibly dredging or as one of the solutions for that.
Yes.
How would dredging deter wildlife from continuing to defecate into the pond and
It won't. I mean, in fact, we enjoy our wildlife and bird populations. We do try to oil eggs and so forth. What dredging does is improve water circulation. And what improved water circulation does is move the bacteria more rapidly out to the ocean, where the bacteria die. So the point is to accelerate a natural process for cleansing the pond of excessive bacteria. We're not trying to destroy the wildlife or bird population. Can I go on? Yeah, okay. On page 6, we have a graphic that shows the challenge and opportunity of the improved circulation, or as it's technically termed, hydraulic turnover. Now, RIDEM uses the Buzzard Bay Project, or BBP, to calculate loading limits for bacteria and for nitrogen. So it's a well-established and respected tool by the state. The BBP states that loading limits for an estuary, which is what Green Hill Pond is, are nearly directly inversely proportional to the hydraulic turnover time. In other words, the higher the water turns over, the more contaminants can be allowed to be loaded into the pond. It's just common sense. If you have a closed water system, you're going to reach unacceptable levels very quickly. whereas if the water is turning over, you can more generously load for achieving the same water quality level. This is one reason why Ninigret, which can absorb several times, about 2.5 times the loading of Green Hill Pond, and still maintain high water quality year after year, because it's getting flushed repeatedly by the breachway there. In other words, the high levels of bacteria from runoff in Green Hill Pond hangs around for a long time, causing shellfish to not be safe to eat, and also failing all the water quality metrics there. As seen on page 7, we aim to get the water moving faster. Specifically, we aim to restore water circulation in Green Hill Pond by dredging the existing channel to a depth of 3 to 4 feet, which in most areas will double the depth, and a width of 20 feet, and a length of 4,500 feet, reaching the deeper blue water areas, and I use that generously, on each side that you can see in the aerial photograph. In other words, dredging the yellow line that's on that chart. The current project will examine the effectiveness and safety of this proposal, ultimately leading to CRMC and DEM permit applications. That's the scope of the project that we're proposing here. As seen on page 8, the project consists of 3 phases. The first phase is field work to support the modeling, including bathymetry, velocity, water quality measurements, performed by Dr. John King and his staff of URI, School of Oceanography. We are asking specifically for the town of South Kingstown to fund phase 1. That will lead to phase 2, hydraulic modeling, to actually understand the water flow and how this will be impacting the water quality. That will be led by Dr. Malcolm Spaulding, also of URI. CRMC has already signed a grant administration for that piece of the project. It has been finalized, but critically, it's dependent upon phase 1 funding. Without phase 1, the modeling is not going to have the data in order to model, and the project will end at that point. So your vote tonight is very important. Phase 3 is what we as Friends of Green Hill Pond are taking on board. That is to support the field work to specifically support the DEM application involving sediment sampling, submerged aquatic vegetation, and shellfish surveys. That is also $25,000.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
That? So we get to phase 3 as an example, and Friends of Green Hill Pond are raising the $25,000. Is that what you're saying there?
Yes.
And then the question I had is when it comes to the next block to the right where it says status, fundraising kickoff pending town council decision.
Correct.
What does that mean?
What it means is we did not want to start formally fundraising and collect funds that pending without knowing what your decision is here tonight. If you vote, as we hope, yes, we will begin the process of fundraising for sure. Right now, we've just been casually collecting pledges, but not actual dollars.
Do you have a lot of support in the community there?
Oh yes, oh yes. We've contacted 11 civic organizations around the pond watershed in both South Kingstown and Charlestown. Received, and the collection of 11 civic organizations constitutes 1,000 members. So we've got a large database. We've been talking to many of them. There's been not only explicit pledges of support, but private pledges as well. We have explicit pledges right now of $9,000 towards that $25,000 goal, and we haven't even solicited anybody. So we feel comfortable that we can raise it. And by the way, some of that money is coming from Charlestown too. Are there any other questions? I'll move ahead.
Coming from Charlestown, private citizens, you mean, or do you mean?
And businesses.
Okay.
Not the town. I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
As seen on page 9, this project's been discussed with many stakeholders, and we believe it's ready to go. I won't read you the list. You can read the list. But I do want to highlight what I just mentioned, the 11 local civic organizations. And I listed them out there. Some of you may recognize some of those. We've either had in-person discussions with the entire membership at annual meetings or had private correspondence or emails of the presentations, so forth, and received feedback from them. During our meetings, we've been asked a number of questions, including the role of Charlestown. Let me hit that directly. Page 10. We made a presentation, Bill Pulsifer from Charlestown and I made a presentation to the town council in June, and prior to that to the Charlestown Pond Commission. We were thankful that the Charlestown Pond Commission voted unanimously in favor of approving the $25,000 request that we made of them. Unfortunately, the town council decided against it. And you can watch the proceedings online if you prefer. The core argument they made was that their main problem, as they viewed it in Charlestown, was nitrogen, and specifically nitrogen contaminating their well water. Because if that got to a high enough level, they would be forced to obviously put in a water system at enormous cost. So they are laser focused on nitrogen and keeping nitrogen under control. They're less worried about bacteria at the moment, but they acknowledge that it's a serious problem. It's why eastern Ninigret is banned for shellfishing and has water contact issues as well. But in juggling the priorities for them, they come down strongly on the side of nitrogen. We, in contrast, believe that both should be attacked, but they didn't see it that way. There's other Charlestown-related issues that were raised by the town staff, and we can talk about those if you want. I listed them out here with our responses, but if the council's more interested in moving on, I can move on.
Well, suppose we do contribute this $25,000 and it's agreed that we are going to dredge, and Charlestown says, I'm not compelled to contribute at all, but dredge to our benefit for sure. What would we do then? I mean, it would obviously benefit the town of Charlestown if we did dredge, but if
it would benefit the town of Charlestown, but let's be clear what we're trying to do here. The main target is Green Hill Pond, which is 65%, 70% within the town of South Kingstown. The Charlestown side is an important vehicle for moving the water, obviously from the ocean, from the breachway, to Green Hill Pond. So yes, we're going to be dredging partly in Charlestown, but the main benefit is going to be in South Kingstown because we're going to improve tidal flushing here. Things are silting up badly on our side. Our side has not been dredged. There's no records of when it was last dredged, according to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and CRMC. So we are really restricting the water flow on our side. Let me give you one illustration. The Department of Transportation in 2016 did a study, a water depth study of the Creek Bridge, which is what separates Ninigret from Ninigret Pond from Green Hill Pond. They found the right or north side to be 4 to 5 feet, depending on the tides. The left or closed side was 2 feet. So just improve, even though that's in Ninigret, just improving the south side will improve the water flow to us. So yes, we can take a stand and say we're not going to do this for because Charlestown doesn't participate. But I argue we're cutting off our nose to spite our face. The problem of water circulation is in South Kingstown. That's what we're trying to fix. And Charlestown is just a means to doing that. The other point I want to make is that, look, Friends of Green Hill Pond have stepped forward to fill in the breach here. We were disappointed as well in Charlestown. Would like to see them part of this. But it is not costing South Kingstown any more money than the proposal we made in March. We have stepped into the breach. We're still irritated at Charlestown, but we have hope that over time, the compelling nature of our project and the results, along with maybe a broader view of self-interest and possibly changes in council members, might eventually win the day. We haven't given up hope on it.
I have a question for Steve. If the outcome of this study comes out to say that we need to dredge, would the town of South Kingstown be responsible for that cost? And if so, you know, we talked about, in theory, this costing well over $1 million to do. We would have to bear the entirety of that cost, correct?
No.
The only thing we're looking, think of this as a process.
Okay.
It's the first step in a process to determine what type of improvement would be necessary, what type of result is anticipated if the dredging were accomplished. There's no commitment of more than the $25,000 from South Kingstown.
Correct.
If, in fact, there was a recommendation that we could make the pond swimmable and fishable with the dredging, and the dredging was going to cost $1.2 million, it's a project which would have to find funding. It's not a project that would be a South Kingstown required project. It could be one that South Kingstown would contribute to. It could be that a special management district were set up and those people benefiting, having specific benefit from improved water quality, may be required to pay a portion of the price. Or there may be federal dollars or private sector. One thing I do want to correct is this isn't the same proposal that was made in March. In March, we were looking at a two-pronged approach. We were looking at not only the dredging.
The breachway, you're right.
But we were looking at a breachway.
Right.
And the town's interest, from a staff perspective, was certainly a great deal more concerned about the feasibility of a breachway than we were about the success that would be associated with a dredging.
That is correct.
This isn't the same proposal. What we're doing here is asking for the same $25,000, not to study both issues, but to study the one issue, because we've already been told by the state and coastal that the breachway would be an unacceptable solution.
State, yes. The state, particularly the DEM, has said that it is an unacceptable solution.
But again, I just want to clarify that it isn't the same exact proposal, because the proposal in March was both towns contributing.
Correct.
And we are on a staff basis recommending the council provides.
I appreciate that.
For this project, but I want to make sure that the information is 100% accurate that we're providing to the council.
And that's a fair point, that in March, we did scope out and include the breachway as being one of the options to consider. In May, we had a significant multi-hour meeting with the staff, a large number of DEM in Providence, and it became absolutely clear to the leadership of Friends of Green Hill Pond that there was no way at all that DEM was ever going to approve a breachway, and quite frankly, we agreed with their reasons. So we took that off the table. One thing I just want to point out is that there's a high fixed cost to doing this work. There are boats that have to be launched into the pond and run around. So whether you do one piece or a large piece, there's a high fixed cost associated with that. Secondly, there's been engineering work already done by Woodard and Curran on proposed breachway ideas. So some of the work there was done, but what was undone was focusing on the ecological side. But we're going to have to do that anyway for either part of the project. Let me just add one thing to the cost question. Yes, it is estimated that the actual dredging is going to cost $1 to $1.2 million. We don't know what the funding structure is going to be. One recent funding structure that you're probably familiar with is the Sandy funds, which was a 75-25 federal-state split, with the towns picking up some ancillary work. That could come around again. Who knows? But This is to position us to have the studies done, the permits in place, so that we can make a pitch to the proper federal authorities and get in line for funding. If we don't do that, we ain't going to get anything. And that's the fact. So, and I think other towns have been proactive in this in terms of, I'll say putting their hand out for federal funds. This is the way you do it, by having it shovel ready to go when the feds come around.
Excuse me, you mentioned that DEM gave you a bunch of reasons as to why a breachway was not an option.
Yeah, let me turn you to number 13, page 13, the last one. And let me quote from there was a study, an early DEM study done of a breachway in Green Hill Pond that we found in the Pell Library. We brought that to DEM's attention and said, do you stand behind the conclusions? They wrote back in a letter to us, copying John Schock, that said, yes, we do. That study concluded at the end, the effects of a breachway would completely disrupt the ecological balance of Green Hill Pond. In fact, the pond area would be reduced to a tidal muck flat of little value. I've read DEM reports, and I've never seen anything quite that strong and pointed. So it's a pretty firm no. And if you broaden it, and oh, by the way, Drs. King and Spaulding echo that same sentiment. You're welcome to ask Dr. King here questions if you like. In addition, there are other complications. Unless there was an elaborate engineered solution to manage the tidal cycle, the tides would roughly double, having an impact on homes, docks, yards, access roads throughout Green Hill Pond. It would also, because there'd be punching a hole through a protective barrier, we'd be more vulnerable to storm surges in strong hurricanes or even tropical storms. And finally, gaining land rights to the land to actually build such a breachway is no piece of cake. The DEM land, which is the only contiguous piece that crosses from pond to ocean, has explicit deed prohibitions against doing exactly this. Not to mention DEM is opposed. So then you're faced with convincing private property owners, multiple private property owners that are lined up in exactly the right way to grant access for you to dig a hole across their land and make it unusable. And then, of course, there's aesthetic value and all the other stuff. So we took DEM's position as the firm no, but I think the more we looked at it, the more difficult it became for us to see a path forward to victory there. Again, we respect the town staff and their position on it. We just came to a different, and we were open at the beginning, but came to a different conclusion.
Is dredging a permanent solution, or is it something that would need to be done again in, say, 20 years?
Nothing is a permanent solution when it involves, I think, the salt ponds. But I think it's important on the Ninigret side, the channel we are proposing to redredge was last done in 1985. So I think, and that's more exposed to siltation from the breachway, the Charlestown breachway, than it would be on the Green Hill side. So I think it's, barring a major hurricane, I think it's reasonable to assume this is a 30-plus year event before we'd have to do it again, which is another plus, by the way, for doing a dredging event. It's a once and done versus a lot of these other solutions that have to have ongoing maintenance required every year to clean out the siltation and stuff like that. Let me draw your attention on that same page to number 11, because this is a common one I'm hearing. Aren't you just diluting the bacteria problem? As I mentioned in the outset, the answer is no. We're moving the bacteria problem into an environment where it gets killed. And it drives me nuts when people say you're just diluting pollution. No, it's not pollution, it's a living organism, and we're killing it in a more efficient and rapid fashion in order to preserve the quality of the water. Finally, we get to the big question on page 14. Will it matter? Our short answer is this is what this project aims to find out. It's the key objective of Phase 1 and Phase 2. So why should we take a chance on it? Well, I think if you look at multiple aerial photos by Rhode Island over a period of decades, you will see the gradual siltation up of this entire area. In addition, I mentioned the DOT findings that there's heavy siltation on the south side of the bridge. So even if you just clean up 2 feet of siltation throughout this process, 20 feet wide, you will increase the water flow roughly by 50%. Now, that is subject to modeling. So there's enough room here, we think, that it'll improve things somewhat, quite a bit, who knows. That's why we have to get this study done to survey Green Hill Pond, understand its hydrodynamics for the first time ever, and get this project done. So we are now come to the big ask on page 15 and my final slide. We think we are ready to go, but obviously need your support. This is a modest, low-risk project that could have broad water quality benefits. We have a one-time opportunity now with material $50,000 in state support that was hard fought to get. That's for Phase 2. If Phase 1 is not funded, that may go away because we don't see necessarily a path to rejigger things. A complaint we've had is, well, CRMC and DEM aren't engaged or won't be engaged or won't approve it. CRMC is engaged, and not only engaged, but acting as the project lead of Phase 2. They are committed. We think that shows a very promising situation for permitting. DEM has, in our letter, acknowledged the potential water quality benefits, and Dr. King has personally worked with the DEM staff to ensure that their requirements are in his statement of work, and they've been very helpful and close in cooperating with us. The overall feasibility, as I said, has been reviewed multiple times by both Drs. King and Spalding of the School of Oceanography. We have spent time vetting it with all the major stakeholders over a 10-month period of time. We've done detailed fact-based research to answer questions and concerns that were raised. And finally, this is a broad-based local community support involvement that's being led by local volunteer homeowners. This is as grassroots as it gets. We hope you will agree that our request has merit. Thank you for your consideration. Any further questions?
Just one comment or observation. We've received direction from staff that Rhode Island DEM actually is much more concerned with source reduction rather than dilution, and I think the cost of bringing sewers to that neighborhood, it just isn't going to happen.
It's been estimated at $40 to $50 million.
But I have to believe that your 14-year-old study and the updated septic designs that we see today.
Two different things, though.
No, I understand that.
Bacteria, nitrogen.
No, I understand that, but
sorry.
I mean that has to improve, and I get that it's the bacteria, but that has to be a plus in the favor of.
Dredging should drag with it some nitrogen, but we view that as a plus, not necessarily the core objective, because the bacteria levels that, not bacteria, the nitrogen levels that have to be reduced in Green Hill Pond are substantial. And prior studies have been done. The only ones that actually meet the standards is opening a wide breachway and flushing it out. As you know, Charlestown has an aggressive program to subsidize, with federal dollars I might add, septic upgrades, and that may be something to consider for South Kingstown. But we acknowledge the nitrogen problem we'll help it, I think, a little bit, but we're not going to kill it.
Mr. Bowman, this was so professional, the presentation and the information that you have in here. It's very impressive. You talk about it being a grassroots approach, but I mean, you couldn't prove that by me if you just passed this to me and didn't give me any background.
That's very kind. Thank you.
So thorough. Thank you.
And thanks to all the people here who showed up and spent their evening.
Do I have any other comments from any citizens at this point? Any more comments here at the, okay, go
I
ahead.
just want to make sure that we place on the record that the staff recommendation is to provide support for this project. Again, the question of an impaired pond and how we deal with that, the nitrogen is the problem that the state is looking at as being the large issue. Because in the study that we did with Woodward and Curran in 2011, what the state was looking for is a reduction of 61%. The only way we could get to a 61% reduction in the loading was either the breachway, which we realize can't occur, or the sewers. And sewering that area, and we're talking in 2011, the estimate was 40 million. It's probably well over that. So regardless of what we do as far as trying to deal with the dilution problem, we're not addressing the reduction that's going to be required for that pond to be fixed. Currently, there's only one TMDL on that pond. It's for the bacteria. But there's nothing to say that we're not going to see a second TMDL on that pond directly associated with the nitrogen. So certainly staff's been working since the beginning with the group. I think John Schock has provided a great deal of assistance. We are disappointed in Narragansett's position. Obviously, 38%.
Charlestown.
Yeah, 38% of the acreage of that pond is associated with Narragansett.
Charlestown.
I always get Narragansett gets blamed for everything. But I think the key here is that we need to determine, based on the modeling, what the potential impact can be. At that point, where the money comes from, we need to be in a position to be able to attract federal dollars if possible, and without the study being done, we won't be in that position. But I don't want people to believe that for $25,000 we're going to change the water quality in that pond. It's a process, and this is the first step in that process. Hopefully we'll see support both at coastal and at the DEM level. We are still concerned about the salinity level of that pond and what the issues may be, because with Green Hill Pond there is a second issue, and that's the self-reproducing oyster population that is not present in Ninigret. I assume it's because of the salinity levels being different, and if we change that to any great extent, I'm concerned that we're going to see objections with Fish and Wildlife. But again, it's part of a process that we need to go through. But we need to keep our eyes open to the fact that this in and by itself doesn't solve the problem. And if there is a dredging project that's established, a major component of the cost is the spoils and the disposal of those spoils. Until we come up with a solution on where those spoils could be properly located, and the borings have to be done to determine the toxicity level, we're not going to know things. So it is important to go forward, but it is a first step. One of the things John was concerned with was scope creep in terms of the project itself, but I think the way the statement of work has been prepared, it is well defined at this point, but we will still need to watch that aspect of the project. Outside of that, we'd recommend council provide support. In March, the council agreed to have staff review this matter in detail and determine whether the funding sources were available at the state and at the Charleston level. Obviously, Charleston is not going to be a participant at this point, but we think that even with removing the breachway consideration, the the project does have value.
Any further discussion?
And just to clarify, so if we take care of the bacteriological problem, that would allow you to harvest shellfish, unless the nitrogen doesn't cause any type of...
Nitrogen is not a metric used by DEM to ban shellfishing, nor to ban water sports. That's the bacteria. And regarding the feasibility of getting to lifting the shellfishing ban, DEM and us sort of go back and forth on this. As you can see on the page regarding peak value, first of all, the average value is there. We don't have to improve the average values to get shellfishing ban. The peak values are the thing. The question is, how much can we improve the peak values? If you notice in that chart, 10 of the 13 stations are within hailing distance of the peak value levels. There's 3 that's not off the charts. So our hope, and it will have to be confirmed obviously through modeling, is that a win here would be getting 10 of the 13 stations or most of Green Hill Pond available for conditional shellfishing eventually. DEM will require years of data in order to confirm that. So this is, as Stephen said, this is a process.
Motion to approve the $25,000 allocation.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to item 8, comments from interested citizens. If there's anybody in the audience who would like to come up to the podium, please come up and state your name for the record.
I'm heading up there. Guess we'll let everybody clear out for a second.
What's that? I'm sorry. Yes, sure.
Yeah. No, that's quite all right. Hey, my name is Christopher Benson, 11-year resident of South Kingstown. I'm the current president of the Kingston Woods Homeowners Association. Kingston Woods is a 26-lot subdivision off of South Road. Basically our concern is over some inactivity with the building inspector. So, I mean, I just want to kind of share a little story. You know, I moved into my home about, 11 years ago, wanted to build a second deck, go to the building inspector, bring him my plans, approve the plans. You know, he says, okay, you got to go dig the holes. After you dig the holes, call me, I'll come out and check them. Pour the concrete, come out and check them, build the deck, so on and so forth. Very, thorough, efficient, tips, pointers, all that stuff along the way. So, about 6 months or so living in the neighborhood, the property of Stephen Brown, which is actually part of our development but is listed as a South Road address, had a outbuilding that was used as a shed and housed pool equipment. So there's electrical, plumbing, all kinds of stuff. So, we felt it was a real safety concern and brought the issue to the building inspector. They agreed. They issued a violation and gave the choice of either basically tearing the structure down or rebuilding it. The homeowner chose to rebuild, pulled a building permit, and then basically went on to expand the building permit, built a addition, put a deck on this structure, and basically did some of the things that were asked as far as putting a roof and some siding, etc. Well, we notified the building inspector that it appeared that he was building beyond the scope. So in August of 2010, they issued a violation for the scope of work that was being done. And in the letter, it specifically stated that the corrective action needed to take place within 30 days or legal action would be taken. Well, if I have some pictures if you wanted them. This was kind of a last-minute thing, so we weren't able to get you all the documents out ahead of time. But obviously, we're 7 years later. The structure still stands as it does today. No legal action was ever taken, and as a matter of fact, we feel that the condition of the building is even more unsafe. They took down 2 of the walls and the roof that basically made up the addition, never removed the deck. There's a pool that's on the other side, so now there's the fencing or whatever would be a partition is missing, and obviously children, etc., could get into that structure. There was never a door that was put on, which was one of the things that we asked for. You know, there's 15, 16 kids in the neighborhood under the age of 10 years of age that could easily get in there and be injured, harmed, etc. And, you know, we're just kind of at the point of where we're so frustrated with the inaction. You know, every time I'd come down and pay my taxes, I'd stop in and say, hey, where are we? And, you know, I would get, well, we sent a letter. They sent, you know, we sent it certified mail. It takes 5 weeks for us to get it back. They send 5, 6 letters. Everyone's 5 weeks. Supposedly, it was sent off to the city attorney, at which time we were told, well, there was a change in the city attorney's situation, and it just got lost. And there was never any action that was taken. When we kind of, again, tried to bring this back to light, I think there's been at least 3 or 4 letters that have been sent, all of which have been returned. So, you know, I think there's obviously a breakdown in the process. You know, I was a cooperative individual. I pulled the permit. I did what I was supposed to. I followed the rules. But when you have individuals that don't necessarily want to comply, I think other action needs to be taken. So, you know, we're looking at maybe having the town look at the process of how these things are handled, especially with difficult individuals or clients, but more importantly, immediately what can be done. I mean, because we're talking 7 years, 9 if you talk when the initial violation was issued, and we have a structure that basically is exactly the same or worse than it was when we asked it to be corrected in the first place. And like I said, I do have some handouts if you want them to have some pictures.
We did receive some.
Oh, did you receive? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So. And I do have a couple other members of our board that are here as well, our secretary and our treasurer that came in support as well.
Did you want to speak, Steve? Or?
I'm going to agree with everything this gentleman has just said. And when I found out for the first time of the issue, when a member of the association came to my office last week, I advised that we would take immediate action to try to remedy the problem. I've dealt with the building inspector's office. The notice has been sent to the solicitor's office. I'll let Mike address the issue of the solicitor, but the filing was done back in 2011. Unfortunately, at the time that we assumed a consent order was going to be entered on it, something fell apart. And I have no excuses. It should have been addressed. The only thing I would say to you is I wish I knew about it. Because I can't take care of an issue, particularly one that goes on for this many years.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I obviously
I'm a very understanding individual, not to get to my office real quick. Usually.
Yeah. I mean, and as I said to you, when I had a reason to be here in the town hall, I would stop by. Hey, what's going on? And I kind of kept refreshing it in sort of in hopes that something would happen.
Of the structure, I've had review made. I've got a record of each time there was interaction with that individual.
Right. And we understand he's obviously is extremely difficult. We've had issues from an association standpoint. He's part of the neighborhood. He doesn't pay assessments. We're even more frustrated that, he would come back and probably tell you, well, I have, resource issues. We know that he has gone very close to having tax sales, fire tax sales on the property, but yet he has cleared land, improved landscaping, done his driveway over. He's got new gravel that he's doing. So he has resources. He has the ability to do this and just chooses not to.
The only thing I'm saying to you is that I agree that it should have been remedied earlier than it has.
Yep.
I'm going to take whatever steps
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think, from a liability standpoint, I know we've heard lots about liability. I mean, you've known about this issue. If a child were ever injured in there, what would the town's liability being that you've known for the past 7+ years that this structure existed? And I know it fell apart, but that really doesn't matter.
Yeah. So on the positive side, the complaint has been filed in court. It is there. He is represented by counsel. We've been in touch with counsel. My office, I personally was under the impression that this got resolved in 2014, and the fact that I hadn't heard anything again like Steve till recently, so it did fall through the cracks. We thought it was done. I think you all know very well that there are several other zoning violations. We're in court on a regular basis. We do contempt orders. I mean, we follow up on these things. I'm not sure what happened to this one other than it did fall through the cracks. But we don't have to wait now to file a complaint and get an answer and go through that multi-month process. All we're doing now, and it's been done today, is file what we call a motion to assign it for trial. So we're ready to go. We've already informed the attorney for Mr. Brown that that's what we're doing. We're going to move forward, and I will give you an update so that you all know, and certainly you will know what's happening. But we will pursue this in court the way we pursue all other zoning violations, and frankly, in which we've been very successful. I don't see why, in this case, we won't get the same result. So either through his attorney, all that's going to come down, or we're going to get a court order ordering it to come down.
What's the timeline on that, Mike? Like, I mean, how long before you get assigned to trial?
I would say, in terms of getting to a trial, because we're in district court, not superior court, certainly within the next 60 days.
Oh, great. Okay.
So we'll get some results soon. And again, I'll keep you advised as to what's going on.
All right. I think it's important to note that when this goes to court, it comes out of Mike's hands and is the judge's determination. In many cases, the judge is going to hear a complaint and is going to provide the gentleman
with more time. Yeah.
With more time. We've got a few cases where the court continues to provide extensions. So, yes, we're going to take the steps that we can. The attorneys will present the case, but the final decision isn't one that rests with us as for prosecution. It's going to rest with the judge as to what he or she wishes to do in terms of expediting a solution.
Would it be of any assistance that we be present? Yeah. Okay.
In the past, in zoning violations, and we've had two most recent ones, having the neighbors present to testify. So absolutely, when we get a trial date set, reach out, ask for you or someone to be there so that first we will have testimony from the building official who put on the record what the violation is of the town ordinance, and then we have a neighbor come up to say,
right.
Yeah, I'm here, I live with this, this is what the issue is. So yes, I appreciate that offer, and I will definitely reach out.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from interested citizens at this time?
Hello, my friends. It's been a little while. Long night. Thank you for your service. Jonathan Daly LaBelle. I actually wanted to speak to the immigration ordinance, but I had a couple other things. I'll try and move quickly to not stretch out your night. So that's why I figured I'd come up at this point. So I'm in support of what was said earlier for the ordinance regarding immigration and the police force. I do think that it would be helpful for there to be clear direction. Years past, there has been concerns with racial profiling, and I know that there's been discussion around that, what methods were used, those types of things, but the ACLU was involved. There have been reports written up and cited, and so I think direction can be helpful, and to show the community true concern. Kind of segueing off of that a little bit, I know that the town council, I don't have in great detail, is looking at trying to address housing issues. There's a question about affordability for people who live in town. There are a lot of people who struggle. I'm one of them. There's people who struggle much more than me. I'm not trying to put a violin out there. But the reality is we are an affluent town, and what can we do to to keep the diversity, economic diversity, but also racial diversity? All right, so I guess I'm just coming forward. I'm not looking for a conversation tonight, but just that with your discussions on housing, to think about how housing, or maybe it's already happening, but how can it be addressed to have that diversity? And I think that, we go back to 1964, and since we are a desegregated society, but in many ways, are we really? And so I think we kind of take for granted in some ways that we are desegregated, but I think when you look at South Kingstown, sorry, I don't want to offend anybody, but you look, we're just like any other community, a lot of communities across the whole country, where really we are segregated in a lot of ways. So it's not to cast blame, this is a societal issue, but hopefully it's something that maybe is already being talked about or can be talked about and addressed in a better way. Okay, so I think that's it for that. There's been a lot of conversation around it, so I thought it was good timing with you talking about housing to bring that forward for consideration. Just the last piece is, I'm guessing you're aware that the state, it's been reported on, it has done an evaluation of facilities of school buildings across the whole state. And I don't really know if they're putting out incentives, but one of the phrases I saw was they're interested in newer and fewer, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But the Jacobs report that I looked it over a little bit. We are definitely, which is not a news flash to anybody here in this room, we have a lot of capacity within our schools. And I know that South Kingstown is doing their own facility review, and you're having a lot of community conversations. And so I just wanted to come up, back when South Road School was closed, 2004, 2005, there was a big push at that time, and then 5 years later, with the push to close Wakefield School, which did not happen, that the community has consistently identified over all that time that the elementary school model is really valued. We don't want to hold our children back, but there kind of is an identification that with all the standardization of education and testing, that's actually taking something away from how our children learn. And it's taking away looking at our children holistically. It's just metrics and standards, and are these children learning this way? Can you prove that they've learned this? Let's get them through to the next grade. And that's not just South Kingstown. That's Rhode Island. That's across the country. But I think in South Kingstown, this is where I live, I've heard a lot of people don't really appreciate that. And they would like to see a more holistic approach to how children learn, the joy of learning, the whole total experience. So I know the state's looking at it, the town's looking at it, and I'm just putting in my 2 cents. And just for the record, I've got 3 South Kingstown High School graduates, and I've got 2 sophomores right there at SKHS. And it's a beautiful town. I'm so happy to live here. And it's 10 o'clock. I really appreciate all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Meg, can I just say something real quick? Yes. I just wanted to point out, since you brought up affordable housing, we did put aside $100,000 to our Affordable Housing Collaborative to conduct a study to figure out the best way to address affordable housing needs in the community. It's also come up frequently in our conversations in our search for our new town manager, and also within the facilities study, and how we can best create a community to promote affordability and economic diversity, as you mentioned. So I would say this council especially has been a lot more active in the discussion about affordable housing, even as recently as the last meeting where we talked to the director of the Welcome House about how we could best support them and their lack of CDBG funding and the solutions that they have. So I don't think that you would have found a council in the last few years that has been quite as proactive. So I do think we're good on that conversation.
Any other comments from interested citizens? Seeing none, we'll move on to the town manager's report.
Just following up on Liz's comments, the RFP for the affordable housing review is in its final stages at this point. And one of the things that we're really attempting to do is to define what is the housing, affordable housing types that can work in a suburban community like South Kingston. How do we get away from in-law apartments being considered affordable housing units with zoning incentives? How do we get a better look at redevelopment of existing neighborhoods that are serviced by buses that are within walking distance of services? Those type of things are going to be a component of the overall study. We'll be evaluating not just the existing documentation that's there, but this will also become a critical component of the comprehensive community plan update that's being done. Yes, the $100,000 set aside, we're looking at this component of the study probably in the $30,000 to $40,000 range, and then we can also have that remaining dollars available potentially for leveraging and any other types of projects that come forward, or if there's additional studies that are necessary.
Great. I have a question. I'm sorry. I just wanted to know the status on the project over by Saugatucket River, the drainage project, if it's on schedule and everything looks good.
Everything, I looked at it today. The turf was installed today. I think that project is on time and will be done by the October 7th date that we talked about.
Awesome. Thank you.
Moving on to the town solicitor's report. Okay, moving on to appointments.
We have some reappointments to the Historic District Commission. Carolyn Griswold and Andrew Martinez for terms to expire December 2020.
Any others?
Reappointment to the Housing Authority?
I would
No.
suggest that we've had a number of people apply for the Housing Authority.
You're right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yep. Does not wish.
Don't we have another application in here, but I'm not quite off the top of my head now for what position.
That's for the.
So on reappointments, that's my resolution.
Second.
All those in favor?
No discussion.
Aye. Dale, can we also advertise for some of those open positions? I see the EDC has some openings, and then the Housing Authority will have one as well. I think that'd be awesome if we can. I know you do that anyways, but I figured I would just put on your list. Thank you.
Okay. In the interest of
Dale, can we also send a letter of gratitude and thanks to Fran? Okay.
Item number 12, a resolution authorizing an award of bid to Parasol Builders located in Warwick to construct a handicapped accessible deck with ramp at the adult day services on Post Road in accordance with all specifications in the amount not to exceed $46,450, including a $4,000 contingency. And it's described in a memorandum from the Leisure Services Director to our town manager on September 14th.
3 bidders were submitted. We were required to go back to those 3 and ask them for amended bids to try to reduce the price associated with the project. The lowest qualified bid after the negotiated settlement was the $48,500 with Parasol. I recommend council award based on the recommendation and the contingency of the $4,000.
Motion to approve item 12A as presented.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Seeing no oppositions, we'll move on to D, a resolution directing staff to prepare an application for the Planning for a Livable Future Technical Assistance Program and authorizing the town manager to submit the same to the Rhode Division of Statewide Planning as further described in a memorandum from the Director of Planning to the Town Manager on September 14th.
It's the strangest two resolutions I've seen because they're both asking you to do the same thing, but I'd request the council approve as presented. Essentially, what this would do is to give up to $10,000 in consulting assistance to the town to look at Old Tower Hill Road and to determine what type of improvements and safety enhancements could be made within that roadway based on the number of accidents that we're seeing, to see if we could also increase the vegetation in the area and to make it a more pleasing drive coming into the community. There will be a local match, which would be a soft match, which we would have town staff provide the supports for if we're successful in obtaining the grant. I'd ask council approval for both items D and E.
Motion to approve items 12D and E as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no oppositions, we'll move on to F, which is a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute individual payment in lieu of taxes, the pilot agreements for 2017 and 18 with the South Kingstown Land Trust, the Jewish Children's Home of Rhode Island, Camp Jury, and the Welcome House of South County in accordance with the Town Code Chapter 17, Taxation, Property Tax Exemptions, and Payment in lieu of Tax Agreements for Charitable Organizations, Section 17-45.
As noted in the resolution, there's three organizations that take use of the ordinance that was adopted in 2003 to provide for tax payment in lieu of taxes. The three are listed here. I'd recommend the council approve using the same standards that we have since the program's inception in 2003.
Motion to approve item 12F as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no oppositions, moving on to H, which is a resolution authorizing an award of contract to R.E. Erickson Company, located in Walpole, Mass. For Water Division SCADA improvements in the amount not to exceed $29,681 with a $3,000 contingency to be funded from the Water Enterprise Fund unassigned net assets. And it's further detailed from the Public Services Director to the Town Manager on September 19th.
As noted in John's memo, there needs to be a replacement on the supervisory controlled and data acquisition system that we use in the water system. That's the automation of the system, which keeps the water flows into the different tanks at proper levels. Ask council approval as presented.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no oppositions, moving on to I, which is a resolution authorizing an award of bid to National Wash Authority in Morrison, Illinois for exterior power washing of the Victoria Lane and Metucket Road water tanks in an amount not to exceed $52,445, including a $5,000 contingency, with authorization that any funds expended in excess of $49,000 be appropriated from the water fund's unrestricted net assets, and as further described in a memorandum from the Public Services Director, again on September 19th of this year.
As I noted in the pre-session with the council, that we had rejected the lowest bid that had been submitted since it did not meet the specifications, which would require the use of a lift rather than a cabling system for the workers doing the actual work. I also wanted to note that we went out to bid for South Kingstown and Narragansett's water tank as a way of trying to reduce mobilization costs because these companies come in from great distances. The recommendation is to go with the lowest qualified bidder that was presented, and we have had work with them in the past. We still expect that on every third year we will be required to continue this type of a cleaning process.
Motion to approve item I as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
With a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Steve, how high are those tanks? John? Yeah. Okay.
The one in my neighborhood holds 400,000 gallons.
Catch me on that lift. Good.
Did we have a second?
We
Yeah, you do.
could provide you with a
All
tour
those in-
through the center pole.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any oppositions? Hearing none, we're moving on to J, a resolution authorizing an amendment and award of contract, which was originally authorized in 2015 to Jeremiah and Associates of Providence for wastewater engineering, design, and construction management services from an amount not to exceed $151,100 to an amount not to exceed $252,100, including a $20,000 contingency. And again, this is further described in a memorandum from the Director of Public Services Director to the Town Manager on September 20th.
Jeremiah and Associates is the town's wastewater systems consultant of record for the redevelopment of various system components. Three elements that need to be addressed is the Kingston pump station's wet well improvements, as well as the pump station's force main evaluation and potential replacement. Those are very expensive items. We, as the regional partner, seek the engineering work. Each of the regional partners, the University of Rhode Island and the town of Narragansett, based on flow going through those system elements, is responsible for both the cost of the engineering and the cost of the improvement when in fact it is put into play. So while we're showing a $101,000 increase in the value of the contract, only a small portion of that, in the case of any of the Kingston improvements, it would be about 13.5%. And when it comes to the handling, solids handling system, South Kingstown share would be around 35%. The rest would be either URI or Narragansett.
Motion to approve item J is presented.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any oppositions? Hearing none, motion carries. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned at 10:10.